All right, so you guys sent us a ton of articles about this whole Ranveer Allahbadia thing, and wow.
Yeah.
It's a lot to unpack.
It's really something else.
So we're going to do a deep dive today and try to make sense of it all, this joke gone wrong.
It's amazing how one comment on YouTube can just explode like this. Ranveer Allahbadia, or as you might know him, BeerBiceps.
Right!
Finds himself in hot water after a joke he made on Samay, Raina's India's Got Latent show.
Right.
Police complaints, FIRs, even politicians are getting involved. It's become a whole thing.
Okay, what could he have said that caused this much trouble?
So picture this, Ranveer's on the show.
Yeah.
Right? And they put him in this hypothetical hot seat.
Okay.
The question is, would you rather watch your parents have sex every day for the rest of your life?
Oh, God.
Or join in once to make it stop forever?
Oh, my. Yeah. You can already see where this is going.
His response, and let's just say the way he phrased it, that's what set everything off.
It sounds like a joke that would make anyone uncomfortable.
For sure. And the reaction was instant YouTube. India actually took down the episode.
Really?
Yeah, under government orders, no less.
Wow.
But the fallout for Ranveer, it didn't end there.
I bet some people are thinking, so what, a video gets taken down happens all the time?
Right.
But this is Ranveer Allahbadia we're talking about.
Exactly.
This guy has millions of followers, brand deals with huge companies like Spotify, Amazon Prime Video, even Intel. I mean,
this is a big deal.
This could really hurt his career.
Absolutely. Brands are so careful these days, they're terrified of anything that could hurt their image.
Right.
One wrong move, and suddenly you're facing boycotts, bad press, the whole 9 yards.
It's like everything is so much more intense now with social media.
It spreads like wildfire.
And it wasn't just hypothetical either.
No.
Singer B. Proc, he was supposed to be on Ranveer's podcast.
Right.
But after all this, he backed out publicly.
Wow.
That's a real consequence right there.
It really shows you the power of public opinion.
Yeah.
And this didn't just stay online either.
Oh, no.
This blew up into a political debate.
Really?
Yeah, there was condemnation from across the political spectrum. Gaurav Gogoi, the Congress MP.
Yeah.
He even called on Prime Minister Modi to reconsider his past support of Ranveer.
Because he gave him that award, right?
Exactly. The Disruptor of the Year award just last year.
So from a joke on a YouTube show to a political talking point.
It's crazy, right?
That's quite a jump.
And there's more Priyanka Chaturvedi from the Shiv Sena UBT party.
Okay.
She says she wants to take this all the way to the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting.
So now we're talking about potential policy changes.
It's incredible how quickly this escalated.
What I find really interesting, though, is that not everyone was against Ranveer in the show.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
There were actually quite a few different opinions floating around, right?
Oh, absolutely. You had people like Dr. Vilamani, the founder of ThyroCare, calling for a total boycott of Ranveer.
Yeah, I saw that.
But then you also had takes that were a little more interesting,
Like what?
Gaurav Taneja, or Flying Beast, as he's known online, he suggested that maybe Samay Raina was pushing things a little too far. Maybe even trying to get YouTube India shut down with this kind of comedy.
Interesting.
So was it offensive humor or a deliberate provocation?
It's hard to say.
People were debating free speech and the government's role in all of this.
It's a complicated issue.
The founder of Careers 360 even chimed in saying the show was subscription-based.
Right.
So it was for a specific audience who knew what they were getting into.
That's a good point.
It became this big debate about who gets to decide what's acceptable.
And where do you draw the line?
Exactly. And it's even trickier online.
Because it can go viral so fast.
In the blink of an eye, something can reach a global audience.
You don't get that kind of reach with traditional media.
It's a whole new ballgame.
But it wasn't just YouTubers and politicians who weighed in on this.
Right.
The comedy community had a lot to say, too.
Oh, absolutely. They really had to look inward and have some tough conversations.
I bet.
It was a big moment of reflection for them.
What were some of the main perspectives that came out of that?
Well, you had BeerBiceps, a pretty well-known stand-up comedian in India.
Yeah.
He said that the audience absolutely has a right to critique comedy.
Of course.
But he also criticized some media outlets for using this controversy to make all of new media look bad.
So he was saying, let's not overreact here.
Exactly. And Snehal Mehra, you might know her as BC Auntie.
Oh, yeah. I've seen her videos.
She raised a really important point. Imagine you're a young comedian just starting out.
Right.
And you see what happened to Ranveer.
It would make you hesitate.
Exactly. Would you still feel comfortable trying out edgier material?
Probably not.
That's the chilling effect in action.
It's like if the stakes are this high for one joke,
Yeah.
are we going to see a whole generation of comedians just playing it safe?
It's a valid concern.
Afraid to push any boundaries?
Yeah. Marah even suggested that this whole thing might force comedians to be more careful about where they draw the line.
You mean like being more aware of what's acceptable and what's not?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll lead to a more conscious effort to define those boundaries.
So we've gone from a single joke on a YouTube show to discussions about censorship.
Right.
Freedom of expression.
It's a lot.
And the future of comedy itself.
It's a deep dive, for sure. And there's another layer to this that we can't ignore: the legal stuff.
Oh, yeah. The police complaints and FIRs.
As serious business. It goes beyond just online outrage.
Absolutely. We'll get into all that legal drama in just a minute. But first...
Just take a quick break and we'll be right back. This whole thing with Ranveer's joke, it really snowballed. You know, from social media outrage to political reactions, even impacting the comedy scene.
Yeah. But we're looking at all these articles because it went further than that, didn't it?
Exactly. It went from online anger to legal issues.
Those police complaints and FIRs, right? That's serious stuff.
It's one thing to get called out online, but actual legal action, that takes things to a whole new level.
For sure. And it really shows just how sensitive this whole area is.
Absolutely. Humor and offense, especially today, you've got laws around hate speech, inciting violence, even just basic decency.
Right. So where does a joke become something that could actually get you in trouble with the law?
That's the question, isn't it? And you mentioned FIRs.
Yeah. What does that even mean for people like me who aren't lawyers?
Well, FIR, it stands for First Information Report.
Yeah.
Basically, it's how a criminal investigation starts in India.
Okay.
Someone files a complaint with the police saying a crime has happened, and boom, the investigation begins.
So in this case,
multiple FIRs were filed against Ranveer, Samay, Raina, and others from the show. Wow. The accusations were serious things like promoting obscenity, violating laws about indecent content.
So it wasn't just a slap on the wrist.
No, it was a potential legal battle, a lot to worry about for everyone involved.
It shows how seriously this was taken by authorities.
Absolutely. And remember, we talked about how YouTube India took down the episode on government orders.
Right.
That's not just them responding to public pressure that suggests they might have seen it as breaking the law.
So a joke leads to public outrage, political condemnation, and ends up with police complaints and the government stepping in.
Quite the chain of events.
It really does highlight how powerful these online platforms are.
It's amazing what starts as a seemingly harmless joke can escalate so fast, especially when it touches on sensitive topics or maybe even breaks legal boundaries.
It's a lot to consider, isn't it?
Yeah.
But amidst all the backlash and legal trouble, we shouldn't forget that not everyone was against the show or Ranveer.
That's true. It's important to remember not everyone saw this as clear-cut right and wrong.
Right.
Some argue that the joke was intentionally provocative, pushing the boundaries, which comedians often do.
Makes sense.
Others defended it as just edgy humor aimed at a specific audience who understood the context.
Like we were saying earlier, context matters.
Yeah, maybe for some it was all in good fun, but for others it definitely crossed a line.
It shows that humor is subjective.
What's funny to one person could be offensive to another. And in our digital world where things go viral instantly, that potential for misunderstanding and offense is huge.
Absolutely. It's like the think before you speak idea, but on a global scale.
Think before you post it. Makes you realize how connected we all are and how quickly things can spiral out of control.
And going back to what you said about the chilling effect, all this could make other creators think twice before trying anything edgy or pushing boundaries.
Forget that, what if this happens to me? Failing. They might be too afraid to express themselves freely, worried about facing similar consequences.
And that's what you call the chilling effect, right?
It can stifle creativity and lead to less diversity, less interesting content online.
So this controversy, its impact goes beyond Ranveer himself.
Right.
It could shape the content we see online, maybe even make it more bland and less daring.
Exactly, and that's why it's so important to talk openly and honestly about these issues. Finding that balance between protecting people from harm and allowing creative expression.
Even when it pushes boundaries or challenges what's considered normal, right?
Absolutely. It's a tough balance to find that sweet spot where freedom of expression and respect for different views can coexist.
It is, and it's not just on the creators.
No platforms, policymakers, and all of us as a society, we need to be part of the conversation.
We've talked about the fallout from the joke, the reactions, the legal stuff, the impact on comedy, but we can't forget there's a person at the center of this.
Right. And all the analysis, we have to remember there's a human being going through all of this.
So what was Ranveer's response?
That's a great question and a crucial one because while we're dissecting the situation, He's living through the consequences.
So how did he handle all of this?
Well, let's dive into Ranveer's response and look at the wider implications of all this after a quick break.
We've been looking at this whole Ranveer Allahbadia situation from all sides, but we can't forget there's a person at the center of all this.
Right. A human being dealing with the fallout.
So how did Ranveer respond to all of this? Did he just disappear, or did he face the music?
He didn't hide at all. He actually went on social media.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Instagram specifically, and addressed it head on.
Interesting.
He made a public apology, acknowledging that his words were insensitive, and even admitting that comedy wasn't really his thing.
So he was saying maybe he misjudged the situation.
It sounded like he was suggesting that maybe he didn't fully grasp how his words would be perceived.
Yeah, so he took responsibility for it.
He did, and that takes guts, especially when you're facing so much criticism.
Yeah, imagine the pressure he must have been under.
It's one thing to say sorry, though.
Right.
Ranveer went a step further. He asked the video makers to remove the insensitive parts.
So he was trying to fix things, not just apologize.
Exactly. He was trying to actively minimize the damage.
That shows a sense of accountability, a willingness to do more than just talk.
It does. And it brings us back to something we talked about earlier. This whole situation is a huge reminder for all of us, not just Ranveer, about how much weight our words carry, especially online.
It's like that saying, think before you speak, but amplified.
Think before you post.
Yeah.
Right? Because in seconds, what you say can reach millions of people. It's like a ripple effect. You don't always see the consequences coming.
It really highlights how interconnected we are and how quickly things can get out of control.
Absolutely. And another big takeaway, I think, is that humor can be so tricky, especially in a world as diverse and connected as ours.
What's funny to one person can be deeply offensive to another.
Exactly. And navigating those sensitivities, particularly when you're dealing with touchy subjects, it takes a lot of careful thought and awareness.
It's a balancing act, being mindful of the context of your audience and the potential impact of what you say.
It is. And this Ranveer Allahbadia situation has sparked a conversation that we needed to have about where we draw the line between humor and offense, the limits of free speech, and how platforms and policymakers should regulate online content.
It's like this controversy opened up a whole can of worms.
It did. It's forced us to grapple with some really complex issues that we're all facing as a society.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm left wondering, what does this mean for the future of online content, for how we interact with each other in this digital world?
It reminds us that we're all part of this digital ecosystem, and what we do online and offline has an impact. It's about responsibility, empathy, and recognizing the power of our words.
That's a great point. And on that note, we want to hear from you, our listener. What are your thoughts on all of this? Where do you draw the line between edgy humor and something that crosses the line? What role do you think we should all play in making the digital world a place where humor can exist without being disrespectful of different viewpoints?
It's a conversation we need to keep having, and we encourage you to think about it, talk about it, and challenge your own assumptions.
We're all figuring this out together, and the more we have these open and honest discussions, the better we'll be at creating a digital world that's both exciting and respectful.
That's the goal, isn't it?
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration. Until then, stay curious.